Meanwhile, Pakistan's iron brother China is up to its old games. The Muslim holy month of Ramzan is on, and a new report on Chinese Muslims is out. These are the Uyghurs in China's Xinjiang province. They're among the most persecuted people in the world, and our reports say they're not being allowed to fast during Ramzan. Of course, Pakistan is not complaining or condemning this. Neither is any other Islamic nation. They only want to champion the cause of Indian Muslims. Ramzan or not, they will not question China. But we'll tell you what's going on. Quick primer first. Uyghurs are a Turkic ethnic group. Some of them reside in Central Asian countries, but most of them come from China's northwestern province of Xinjiang. It's home to over 10 million Uyghurs. They make up less than 1% of China's total population, but they're almost half of the population of the Xinjiang province. Over the last few years, these people have been under attack, constant attack by the Chinese state. More than 1 million of them have been jailed. There are reports of forced labor and state-sanctioned rape. Uyghurs live under severe restrictions and surveillance. And now they're not being allowed to pray during Ramzan, to fast during Ramzan. Reports say China has sent spies into Uyghur villages to enforce this. Beijing calls them ears. And these spies or ears are mostly Uyghurs. China uses them to oppress their own people. What do? These spies bring reports of fasting to the Chinese authorities, and those found observing the Ramzan fast are rounded up. It's a flagrant violation of human rights, and sadly, it's not new. No one seems to be doing very much about it. Once in a while, Western agencies and leaders bring it up. As we speak, the German foreign minister is in Beijing. This is what she said earlier today.
Since respect for human rights is also in our economic interest, I explained to my colleague in our bilateral talks that we are concerned that the scope for civil society engagement in China is shrinking. Human rights are being curtailed. What this means for Uyghurs is documented in black and white in the report of the High Commissioner for Human Rights.
The UN Human Rights Commission released a report last year. It talked about mass arbitrary detentions, torture, cultural persecution, family separations, forced labor and sexual violence. And this has been going on for years. Beijing has been going after Uyghurs since at least 2017. That's when China began rounding up Uyghurs and putting them into concentration camps. China calls them re-education and training camps. It says people were sent there to these camps to prevent radicalization. But those who survive and escape have horror stories to tell. Here's one such.
On 1st of April 2017, all women detainees were chained onto the bed. I was chained to the bed for 20 days. The first they shackled my feet and then they detained. The women's condition in the detention centers are horrible. All women are shackled and our language of Uyghur were prohibited to speak.
Does that sound like re-education and training to you? A former Human Rights Watch chief described the situation like this.
So, for example, even today in the Xinjiang region of China, where the Chinese government is detaining, 1 million Uyghur Muslims to force them to abandon their religion, their culture, and their language. That's, one of the biggest crimes against humanity being committed today.
Forced to abandon their religion, culture, and language, he says. The camp survivor earlier said she was not allowed to speak her language. And now reports say they're not being allowed to fast during Ramzan. If this isn't cultural genocide, I don't know what is. The Chinese are killing the Uyghur identity. The dominant ethnic group in China is called the Han Chinese. The Uyghurs are being forced to assimilate, to adopt the dominant Han Chinese way of life. Beijing, of course, denies all of this. And this is not the first time Uyghurs are being barred from fasting during Ramzan. Similar reports have come out in the past. They came out 2 years ago. Those under 65 years of age were not allowed to fast then. This time, apparently, there's a blanket ban. But who will question China? World leaders are busy propping it up as a peacemaker. There are leaders who wax eloquent about human rights. But when it comes to the Chinese state, they pretend that none of it is happening.